Hello, welcome back to Dinks with Debt. My name is Andrea, my husband's name is Anthony, and we are a double income, no kids family on a journey to take control of our finances and dig ourselves out of this ridiculous debt that we've got ourselves into. When I left you last time, I had just completed our January budget and totaled up all the expenses that we had. And based on our income minus our expenses, we were negative. So we had a shortfall for the month. That really kind of spurred us into action, and we had a budget meeting to kind of discuss where we were going to be trimming the fat. So as I mentioned, our current budget includes our income of $96.04 and our estimated expenses of $98.06, and that left us negative $202. We met so that we can come up with a proposal to get to zero. So our goal is to get to a zero-based budget. Your income minus any expenses and savings allocations need to end up at zero at the end of the month. So we had our budget meeting and discovered a couple of things as we went through our accounts, the apps on our phone and TV and all that kind of stuff. We realized that we actually didn't have a Paramount subscription, so that can get removed from, the initial budget estimates that we were going off of. And then the same thing with Hulu. I had a commenter mention that theirs was bundled with Disney and ESPN. And so when we looked, it actually was bundled with that. And I think what happened when I was going through all the charges initially is I was searching, in our account, you can do a search function on, a keyword. And so when I checked out Paramount and Hulu, I saw a charge, and I guess I just wasn't paying attention to the month. We haven't been paying for either of these since at least, I think, September was what we determined. So these have been out of our budget for several months at this point. So that was at least some good news. We can mark two things off of our variable expenses. We also were reminded that we have an Amazon Prime account. So that includes, or that is included with our membership. So that kind of reminded us also that we need to plan for those expenses that are coming up that aren't a monthly expense, but they're maybe a once a year expense. So having this discussion helped us to see that we actually are paying a service fee on one of our accounts. So that needs to be added into the budget. And then we have, like I was saying, those, occasional expenses or annual expenses that we don't see every month and that we may forget about. So in our conversation, my husband mentioned that he purchases breakfast for his team once a quarter. And so he did that back in December. So the next time that he, plans to purchase breakfast for his team is going to be in March. And he typically spends between $50 to $60 for his team. And so we're just going to plan for $60. So it's not going to be included in our budget for January, but we will make a plan for that for February and March to be able to fund this expense. And then likewise, we have a Costco membership that is coming due in April, and then that is $130. And then we also have an Amazon Prime membership, like I said, that is going to become due in August, and that is going to be $139. And we also have a Sam's membership for $50. That'll become due in November. Now, we don't need two big box store or warehouse store accounts. And so I don't even know why we did that, but we're going to be canceling the Sam's membership. So we'll use it until it's almost up in October, and then cancel it to make sure that we're not charged again. So we've already got a reminder set in our phones and everything to make sure to cancel that. But we did decide that we need to shop around for car insurance. It's been a couple of years at least since we've checked the prices because we just have been letting things renew and just paying them. And we have 3 vehicles with full coverage on them. And so we don't know if we're getting the best deal at this point. So we need to shop around. And maybe that will impact our expenses in the future. But through this process, as we were going through things and just kind of discussing everything, we realized that we need to have more regular budget meetings. Dave Ramsey talks about, typically there are two types of people in a partnership, like in a couple. One of them is the nerd or the accountant, and one of them is the free spirit or the spender. And I'm definitely the nerd or the accountant. My husband is definitely the free spirit or the spender. And so I think having more regular check-ins with each other, maybe not once a week, because I think that's overkill for my husband. He will definitely not appreciate that. But for me to feel safe and on track with what we're doing, I think at least, halfway through the month, we need to check in and make sure that we're keeping up with the things that we said we were going to do. And then it'll also give us an opportunity to plan ahead for the month coming up. And that's something that I know we have not been doing. So along with just kind of taking a pulse of where we're at for the current month, if we've overspent, then we can definitely, stop or we can figure out, what's going on. Maybe there's some things that we need to adjust. But the planning ahead for expenses, I know, will hopefully help us in the long run. So we did decide to cancel a couple of expenses. And one of my commenters had said that you can purchase, pest control supplies at, a home improvement store and do it yourself. So that's something that we're going to try. We've never done that before, but we will definitely try it. We did decide to cancel the gym membership. We don't use it that often. And so, that seems like an expense that's okay to go. We may pick up something in the future, like I said in a previous video, but right now we're comfortable with letting that one go. The third hobby is actually my hobby. It's something that I do occasionally, but not regularly enough that I need a monthly membership. And I honestly had just been letting it, go and just continue. So we decided that if I wanted to do this hobby in the future, then I can just pay the a la carte price for that month. And that way we don't have to get back into a membership every month. The Disney and Hulu ESPN package, we decided to let go. That one was painful for my husband because I think there were some childhood shows or some things that he found on Disney that he was enjoying. But again, we looked at all the streaming services we had, and most of the things he could find on different places. There's just a couple of shows that he couldn't. So that hurt him more than it hurt me, honestly. But we did decide also to let Peacock go. So the gym membership, like I said, and the hobby, those have already been drafted for January. So they're going to be included here. But for January, that would net us $117 of savings. And for February moving forward, it's going to net us $157 of savings just from the initial January budget that we had put together. So we're getting closer to that $202 shortfall. We did talk about moving or reducing our expenses from groceries. We currently budgeted $100 a week, and we have decided to try doing $75 a week. And so that moves us from a $500 monthly expense to $375. And again, that's because January has 5 weeks. We discussed also the lunch expenses, and that's kind of why we were okay with reducing the grocery budget, since we were allocating money for our lunches. So my husband's amount will not change. We discussed it, and he, kind of mentioned that it's just one of the things that he looks forward to, getting out of his store and the environment there, and just having some time to decompress in the middle of the day. So we did not take any of the funds out of his lunches, but I felt like I could do with $15 a week. because I really don't have any problem packing my lunch, and there is a place for me to eat at work, even if I'm at a different school. So I feel like $15 will allow me to get a kid's meal on the way somewhere if I needed it, or a salad, or meeting up with friends on the weekend if I didn't use it during the week. And so that would take me from $125 for the month of January down to $75. Again, we did discuss the dining out, and a lot of it has been just for a lack of planning and just being undisciplined about like what we're doing with our lives. And so we discussed, changing that $60 to $75. So I know it seems like we're going up, but again, this was underfunded. We were saying we were going to spend 60, but we were actually spending 75. And we do see dining out as a treat and part of our entertainment. And so we decided to do that every other week. So not 5 weeks, but we're going to do it 3 times. So every other week for the month of January. And that's going to take us from $300 to $225. We also discussed the Christmas fund. And like I said, I'm not willing to drastically cut this because it's typically the one time of the year that I get to see my family, and I want to make sure that we have enough money to purchase the presents that we do get for our limited family members, but also to have money by December 1st to schedule or reserve hotels and be able to have a comfortable, eating out budget and stuff while we're visiting family. So we did decide to move this from $45 a week to $35 a week, and that will still give us the lump sum that we need by December 1st to take care of all the things that we wanted to do. So that'll move us from $225 to $175, and then our HOA dues were $90 a month, and we decided to shave $10 off of that. It'll still give us the wiggle room that we needed to have the money for our annual dues, as well as a small sum in case we needed to do some landscaping maintenance or something like that. So this one didn't change a whole lot, but $10 a month over the year is $120. So from all of this, we were able to shave off $310 from our current budget just by making these changes. And so when we add all those things up and add them back into well, if I can get this page, when we add those back up and into the overall plan for January, the budget, we didn't change anything for our housing and utilities. We did not change anything for our transportation costs. Prescriptions and copays stayed the same. Personal spending and household spending stayed the same. Our grocery budget went down from $1,300 to $1,050, and I know that's still quite high for a lot of folks out there. Our subscriptions and services, we did add in that service fee that we needed to allocate for, and we removed those streaming services that we weren't paying for. That adds up to $247. And then we kept our unplanned expenses, our emergency fund at the same contribution, all of our credit cards and student loans, and then we adjusted for our sinking funds. So in the month of February, we'll add in those new sinking funds for those memberships that we need to pay for every year. But this total adds up to $9,324. And so you'll see here, this didn't include Hobby 3, or it didn't include the gym. And so we do need to add that for January. And so that was a total of $40. And so for the month of January, our total is going to be $9,364. So now when we look at, our income is $9,604, and then minus our total expenses. So that's our, 4 walls, the basic necessities, as well as any of our extra stuff and debt. savings goals, then the total is $9,364. And then that leaves us with a positive number, thank goodness, of $240 for the month. Now, I mentioned before that the goal was to get to 0, right? So we want to go from income to expenses and savings. I'm sorry, income minus expenses and savings to equal 0. So that means that now we need to find out where this 240 will go. Now, I know everybody's going to say, well, duh, this is your snowball. And that is true. But remember, we're also trying to build up our emergency fund. So realistically, we could take this up to $490 for the month. And then if there's anything else that, we don't spend out of these allocations for the month, then those can be applied to our debt snowball. So I think that may be what we do, just so that we can try to get closer to our emergency fund. I mentioned in a previous video that we already have our $1,000, but I'm not comfortable with just having $1,000, and so we need to bulk that up. I would feel comfortable with at least $2,000, and even $2,500, just to cover some of the things that could happen. So realistically, as long as we could stick to this new plan, we would end up with $240 at the end of the month that we could then send to our emergency fund. And so I think that is what we're going to do. What would you all do? It's challenging opening myself up to the criticism and comments and things like that, but I really appreciate you all for being so kind and thoughtful in your responses, because it has given me and my husband some things to think about when we had our budget meeting. And so I am really curious about your thoughts, what we should do with this $240 expected surplus at the end of the month. Should we put that into our emergency fund, or should we use that to start our snowball? So that's kind of where I will leave you today. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you like it. If you know somebody that may be in the same boat as us and is trying to dig themselves out of debt, share this with them. It may be a source of inspiration, or at least commisery, that they can commiserate with us as we go through this journey. But I would really appreciate your thoughts or any positive messages or encouragement that you want to leave as we continue on this journey, the Dinks with Debt. And hopefully when we see you the next time, we'll have our expenses mapped out for the month and start working on that paycheck, budget by paycheck method that the Budget Mom talks about. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you. Bye.